would a great innovator give up so easily on that promised future?
I won't. I'll find a way to save us all.
Welcome guys. Well, as said, I did want to review further days of the End of Dragons beta. This is the first beta going on. 3 elite specializations are available. I've been playing them in as many places and contexts as I find fun, trying to figure out different builds and gathering some of my feedback. So today I'm actually going to review 2 days in one. I'm going to tell you everything I did on day 2 of the beta, and then everything I did on day 3 and what we kind of took away from them. So first of all, day 2, I only played one of the elite specializations, and I'm not going to linger on very long. It was another PvP day. What can I say? I had so much fun coming out of the first review that in PvP that I just wanted to play more of it, but I spent all day this time in ranked. Before, it was kind of casual, easy breezy, fun, unranked stuff among a lot of other people testing the elite specializations. The second day, I played it purely in a much more competitive sense. I was trying to win the games, I was trying to play strong builds and make a build as strong as possible. I spent the whole time, hours and hours and hours, on the Harbinger. I didn't play either of the other 2 specs. So where did the Harbinger manage to take me? You guys might find this curious. Obviously, with both Heart of Thorns and Path of Fire, once those actual expansions came out, their elite specializations were so busted, they were being used everywhere, even in very high level PvP. Well, I actually found the Harbinger was not as strong anymore as my impressions from the first review, where I was very glowing of it. Like, I felt like I was destroying everyone. As soon as I was playing against much more competent people, trying a lot harder, it actually felt like a much more balanced spec. So I was queuing at around the Plat 2 to Plat 3 level. What does that mean for people who don't PvP? Well, realistically, unless you're doing like really serious duo queues whenever you're in there and you're kind of careful about what times of the day you queue and stuff, this is basically as high as the matchmaker goes. There are Plat 3 games, there is potential to get to Legend, but it's rarer. The vast majority of any competent players are here. This is top 100 matchmaking, and when you get to like top 25, top 30, now we're talking more exclusively around Plat 3. So, I'm actually quite happy that Harbinger was able to competently stay around at that level. It is harder to lock and chase down kills when everybody's so much more competent at kiting out, at making sure that they're not taking incorrect fights, bailing before they get too low or lose all their quality of life skills, resustaining by moving into their supports, all that kind of stuff. So Harbinger felt a bit more balanced to me. I will say, for the vast majority of those games, they were filled with toxic, angry, whiny people who were mad to see the new elite specializations. And why is that? Well, because no one was really rating their performance at all. I wasn't seeing any Virtuosos, really. I wasn't seeing any Willbenders, really. The only ones of us who were brave enough were Harbingers, which is probably the most overtuned of the 3. And even then, people looked at it as a detriment at this level of the matchmaking to have one on their team. So it's an interesting observation for me. I think that the devs could kind of leave it in this area and then slowly recalibrate it as time goes forward if they like. And I'm fairly satisfied. It's the other 2 that really need a little bit more work. And again, you might hear me saying, oh, people are upset to have Harbingers on their team, but I'm talking about a level of the matchmaker that 99.99% of the people watching this video are not at that level of play. If you take it into PvP, you're much more likely to have those very positive experiences that I talked about on my first review, and I'm happy enough with that. That's true for a good number of specs, by the way, which are great, but fall away when it comes to a certain caliber of ranked, and of course, tournament play too. One final note on the ranked PvP day, I had so much fun with the buildcraft, guys. One of the reasons I spent so long on Harbinger, really, was because every single queue, I would go back to my traits, I would go back to my gear, my weapons, my utility skills, and I was constantly changing stuff in a really satisfying way. I was always trying to resist adding core necro stuff as much as possible, and in all reality, Harbinger became a lot stronger as soon as I put Lich Form on, and as soon as I put Spectral Walk on instead of the Harbinger Stun Break and so on. It is one of those ugly situations where the more you use the regular stuff, the better it felt, which was a bit lame, but that aside, the buildcraft was really fun. I actually love the Harbinger traits in terms of how they're laid out, and what you might like to pick and when. It was fantastic to feel so lost and see so much value in so many enemy traits and just figure out what was the best combination. A power build that uses maybe a Condi style trait because it gives me cooldown reduction, or is it a Condi build that gives me a power style trait because it gives me stability, or is it a hybrid build which uses all the weirder stuff in the middle? Is the quickness trait better than all the raw stats because I can get my animations out quicker, which is vitally important in PvP before people react or, you know, make plays. It was really cool. Alright, so let's get into day 3. I think this is the thing that most of you guys are going to be really interested in. It's the PvE day. It was like, I did like an 8-hour stream, I think it was, or almost 8 hours. I was just running around in the open world as much as I could, trying to find a good build. So here was my goal. My goal was to find a really satisfying, comfortable, quick killing, open world build. Just like I did with my open world build series a year and a half ago. The idea being that what I want to do is go to Cantha and play around in Cantha, whether that's the open world on my own or in the meta events or during the story, and be using the new toys and having a lot of fun and a lot of comfort with it. I especially want to do that, not just for myself, but I'd love to be able to find these builds and recommend them to you guys. So I'll say, alright, you want to play a Virtuoso? Here's a really good bread and butter place to start off with it. This is what you should do in the open world. That's what I was looking for. And again, just as I mentioned with the Harbinger thing, trying to use the new utility skills, the new mechanics, the most interesting new traits as much as possible. Any kind of new interactions where I could. And just like with my previous open world build series, I wanted these things not to just be able to win really comfortably in the easy areas, but let's say you go to a hard hero challenge or an especially challenging part of the open world. I want it to be safe there. So if you remember from my open world build series, I did this thing where I went to the Djinn in Path of Fire. Fire Djinn are generally really dangerous, and there's a plateau you can find right near the start of the Path of Fire expansion where you can end up fighting 4 all at once. Actually, even 5 if you aggro them in the right way. And I made sure all of my builds could win, even in that situation. And Fire Djinn are really cool because they have a ton of movement, so they're not just going to sit there and let you beat them up. They do a ton of physical damage, they do a ton of Condi damage, they have like these big break bars that you want to get through. They're a really, really fun thing to, you know, test builds again. And that's what I wanted to try for the Cantha builds. Hopefully Cantha itself will have a new equivalent of Flame Djinn, by the way. I'm really excited about that. And I wanted them to be able to fight Hydra and all that kind of stuff too. So, where do we land? 3 classes. Let's open up with the Virtuoso this time. Playing it in PvE taught me that Virtuoso is unbelievably buggy. By far, guys, the Virtuoso seems to be the most cobbled together, recently made beta elite specialization by a very long way. Like, we've seen bugs on the other 2. Like, Harbinger had a bug where you could spam its Vault skill 4, and as long as you landed against a wall or uphill, you could just spam it forever, which is a crazy bug. There have been little bugs, but the Virtuoso is mind-boggling. So let's run through some of them. First of all, the elite skill. I mentioned on my previous review in PvP that the elite skill was incredibly hard to hit. I had a moment where I tried to cast, it's like a laser beam, I tried to cast it across a gap, but it like ran down to the ground instead of across the gap. There's a weird thing with the elite that I noticed in PvP, where if I tried to cast it at a slight angle, and then I would redirect my character a small amount, the elite wouldn't adhere to where my ground target had gone. It would instead move to where my character was now facing as the animation ended, which is not normal Guild Wars 2 skill execution behavior. Felt really clunky, so you kind of have to stand completely straight still to execute that skill. And for strike missions and for raids and certain fractal encounters, I'm sure that that's okay. But for general, normal PvE gameplay, it's like almost impossible to cast this thing in a fun way, and it's such a shame. If you think about it as well, the elite skill is like this long-range targeted laser beam ability. It's the exact same thing as your F1, like functionally. But the F1 isn't bugged, and the F1 does obscene amounts of damage. Like, you can crit for like 25k, 30k on the F1, and you can do it super regularly. And the projectiles and the laser beam moves fast on the F1. So do you want to do F1, or do you want to stand around waiting for the elite the whole time? So not only is the elite buggy, I feel like it kind of like crosses over with the F1 in a weird way, which makes me not want to use it much. When I was trying to identify just why it felt so clunky, I had a moment where I was trying to cast it, and the whole thing would just straight up fail. Like, I've never experienced this before in the game. And remember, it's a beta, so I don't take this as a knock against the game. I take this as a real beta. But literally, I would try to cast the skill, and it would suggest it's been cast, that it would go on full cooldown. I would go through the animation, but then the laser beam wouldn't appear. Just nothing would happen. So you have to be deathly careful with it. It feels very, very, very buggy. Let's talk about some other bugs. There's some trait tuning bugs. So, a few weeks ago, I did a video for you guys about an add-on that you can run for Guild Wars 2, which allows you to see what skills you did and whether they crit and what they hit for, and, you know, what condis you hit and how much they hit for, what damage you've taken, what you've healed. It's like a really cool new way of viewing your combat log, and I knew, it's disabled in PvP, so I couldn't do it on my previous reviews, but I knew that this would be super fun with the Elite Spec beta. So I was running it in PvE, and I could see when I was playing the Virtuoso what was actually doing damage. So there's a trait on the Virtuoso that says when a Phantasm dies, it fires a blade out. And that blade can crit, and it can, you know, do a little bit of damage. Now, the tooltip only shows a small amount of damage. So the idea there then is maybe you're using this blade just to proc another trait. Maybe you give yourself Fury with it, for example, or you do something else. In the current version of the Virtuoso, there aren't actually many interplay traits like that. They're very fun. But that's kind of the idea. It's not much damage. However, I immediately realized through this add-on that the blades are off by a factor of 10 at the moment. I'm sure they're bugged. And so what was actually happening is after every Phantasm I summoned, I could do extra free crits of up to like 9k. I think I almost landed a 10k one. And if you optimize it further, you definitely could. I think it's a bug related to the fact that it's supposed to be taking our Phantasm weapon strength, but it still takes our modifiers or something. It's really weird. But what it meant was that I had a whole section of the Virtuoso where I had a ton of fun, don't get me wrong, but I was kind of just playing with this trait that's obscenely strong. So I'd use like a staff, which would summon 2 Warlocks, and then with the Warlocks die, and the Warlocks do 2 blades at once, and now it's like an 18k spike out of just like a random skill. Or I'd use Greatsword 4. Greatsword is already really fun with the Virtuoso, and now the 2 Berserkers disappear after you've traded, and they do double blades. Or you can do it all at once, and you get just this ridiculous like 40k spike on the back of whatever all your Phantasms just did. It feels a lot like the Chronomancer trait, Chrono Phantasma, where once your Phantasms die, they resummon and use their ability again. It feels the same as that, except if I'm being truly honest, just like much less flavorful. On the Chronomancer one, at least you get to see the whole new animation and the new summoning, and you know, there's a lot of difference between what Phantasm does what, and this is just a little blade that gets thrown out, but does a heap of damage. So that's where a lot of my power stuff went, and it was cool, but I think it's a bug, and once it's gone, I don't know what I'll really be left with after that. Probably just looking at the shatters again, which I'll mention in a second. Another amazing bug that kind of worked to my benefit was on the Condi side. So this is to do with F2. So let's just remind ourselves of how Mesmer works. The F2, no matter what kind of Mesmer you are, does confusion. Okay, cool. So on the Virtuoso, it's 2 confusion per blade, which is pretty much in line with what we saw before. The thing is, you can get 5 blades, right? That's a part of the fun. You can stack these higher. So what you can actually do is 10 confusion on a single button. Now that's pretty cool. You get 5 blades and you F2, 10 confusion. I liked that. Now here's another thing you can do, obviously. You can trait your F2, this is just a Mesmer thing, so that each of your F2 hits does blind, right? And then you can have it so with the ineptitude trait, so that whenever you blind is 2 confusion. So through this, if you fire out 5 blades, it's 5 blinding, confusing, then confusing again blades. It's 20 confusion just on F2. 20! Now that's pretty cool. Now here's a bug. The animation for F2 is this ludicrously exotic, beautiful thing in which your 5 blades, they start off in your chest area. Well, they start off around your shoulders, right? Then what they do is they expand out right around you, like arm's length, all around you, like encircling you. And then from this long distance, they then all fire forwards and join together at your target. It's a really gorgeous animation. One of my favorite animations that they've added, really, with the beta. So here's the funny thing. The way it works is that first moment where they go from your shoulders to expanding much further out, the skill's actually already in play. Now, how cool is this? This is just like a really sophisticated interaction with how Guild Wars 2 skills and stuff works. So they're already doing damage. So let's say I stand inside a Hydra, or any creature, frankly. Apparently, you can just like look at the ground and do it even with a tiny hitbox. Let's say I'm standing inside a Hydra though, and now I press F2. Well, that first half of the animation where the blades are moving out, that's already hitting them. So you actually, and then they fire it properly, so you can do 20 confusion and then 20 confusion again. You can do 40 confusion in one hit. One hit, 40 confusion as just an opener. So of course then I had a lot of fun playing around with that. You know, I would then use like Signet to refresh it and lots of stuff to instantly get 5 blades back, and I'd do 2 of them back to back. So I'd like open a fight with 80 confusion on some poor creature that would use 1 animation and then die. Don't forget they just buffed confusion in PvE as well. So that was all very, very fun to look at, and I don't know whether it will last. It's weird because I say it's a bug, but really it is just the game working exactly as expected, and that's ended up being unintended. So I think that's more the thing, that it's unintended, and standing inside hitboxes to do that's going to be a little bit weird. I don't think this will be here on the next beta. Then the question becomes, okay, how good is it, and how do the builds feel? Well, so I did kill all of the Jinn. I did find some builds that would do it, but mostly it was related to the bugs. Once they're gone, I don't know what I'll run with. For condition damage, they had that really interesting build, Blood Song, based on a Guild Wars 1 Ritualist spirit. Now, I loved the idea of playing Blood Song. What it means is you get loads of blades as long as you're putting out bleeds. And then you can make it so that the blades put more bleeds out, so that it's like an engine that rolls into itself. And it was fun, okay? Don't get me wrong. PvE Virtuoso was very fun, but it felt kind of just like being a Mirage, who already is, you know, really potent Condi builds, but it was like a Mirage who didn't get Jaunt, and a Mirage who didn't get Axe, and a Mirage who didn't get Illusory Ambush, which is like all the really fun stuff about Mirage. You do get a bunch of new F abilities, right? And a couple of new utility skills, but none of the utility skills really feel good on a Condi setup. So the Bloodsong build feels like it doesn't get any fun utilities, because they're all power oriented, and it feels like it gets 1 shatter. All the other shatters feel completely meh, right? So I just sort of wish I was a Mirage while I'm playing the Bloodsong build, which isn't ideal. So then there's the Power idea. Now, Power has this kind of issue with the Elite doing the same thing as the F1, but at least the F1 hits really hard. It's like insane damage. I wasn't joking. It's like 20 to 30,000 damage at 1200 range with F1. It's super fun. But then... Well, and then many of the utility skills work now, like Rain of Swords and stuff, Sword of Decimation. That was all really pretty and very cool. But then the dagger still just wasn't clicking for me. And all the other shatters felt rough. Like, I still wish that F3, as I said at the end of my first beta review, F3 was different, and it was like a flurry of projectiles. None of this class feels like a throwing knife class in any way, and I think that's very disappointing to me. There is one more build I kind of want to try with the Virtuoso, and that's like a power-based parry, block-heavy melee build that keeps quickness on myself. But I'm just not getting a sense of it. Maybe Dagger 3 needs a faster tick rate or something. But I'll come back to you guys on this one maybe a little bit later, maybe after another one of the beta. That's my thoughts on the Virtuoso. Let's look at the Harbinger, which is kind of the complete other world. Harbinger was just busted without relying on bugs and without relying on weird gimmicky interactions. It's just straight up insanely strong. It's so easily dealt with the Jinn challenge, I was shocked. Harbinger was actually the last one I did of the day, because I'd already played so much of him in PvP. And when I took it to the Jinn, they just like instantly died. All their break bars were gone. They were exploded with conditions straight away. My health was rapid firing going up, and they were dead in mere moments. I think one of the reasons the Harbinger is so good, and mostly it's the condition damage build that's really powerful, is because of the torment buffs. You know, condition damage spiking up so much after you break a break bar, and then torment doing more damage while they're standing still. And once you break a break bar, they're stunned, so they're standing still. And now you give someone a ton of torment, like the Harbinger. All of a sudden, these things all just work together, and in an instant, you're looking at like 12 to 15k torment ticks on something that can't move. The power build was actually a little bit underwhelming on the Harbinger for PvE. The thing I was most excited about was the big skill 5 and like nuking people with this, because, you know, it could have power damage on it now because we're in PvE. But really, it doesn't have a lot of base damage on it. It doesn't have a big modifier on it. Really, the power build is about shotgunning people in the face with the skill 2 in Shroud. Pistol feels kind of and all the other Shroud abilities feel kind of eh. Honestly, I would much rather, and I recommend to you guys just to play this guy, Condi. And do you have to do anything fun and special on the Condi build? No, just go with what your heart says. Go Soul Reaping and put on Doomfire. And the super rapid auto attacks are really fun with it. Go Curses and put on Parasitic Contagion if you like. You will feel like an immortal god on this thing if you put Parasitic Contagion on. If not, you can go for even more condition damage with the Scepter trait, even if you're not running Scepter. And the other nice thing about PvE is you can kind of skip one of the Grandmaster traits. One of the traits is about giving you a bit of quickness, right? Well, ignore that. Take the condition damage trait. The condition damage trait pulses Torment out, which can proc your tormenting runes. It pulses weakness out, which annihilates break bars and protects you. Even though you're squishier, you're protected because there's constant weakness everywhere. And it super buffs your condition damage itself. So it's like a triple trait. All three sides of it are incredibly valuable. And you might say, well, where do I get my quickness from? Well, you're in PvE, so putting a celerity sigil on a pistol, that was a chat suggestion. It's actually something I've been doing on Firebrand for a long time. It's something that you'll see on my Elementalist builds these days. It's not to do with the beta, just my current Tempest build runs a celerity sigil. You can do this, and now you just use pistol 3, you have a ton of quickness already, and you can just go for it. I did try a little bit of Plague Doctors, but I found honestly just going pure damage, Vipers, and then that damage feeds your health because of Parasitic Contagion is the best way about going through this. And you know, you can take that Viper's gear into higher end PvE as well, so it'll probably be what I end up recommending on this one. It's just very, very strong. The other thing that I did try a little bit of was minions. So you guys will know for a long time I've wanted minions for PvE to be a little bit more interesting. Everyone obviously already runs them, but I love minion builds in RPGs in general. You know, you put me in a game like Path of Exile, I'm playing a minion build. I love buildcraft around minions. I love the idea of a trait where it says your minions have quickness or your minions have super speed, right? And you get to decide how do you want to augment them. Or your minions have precision or your minions have power. I've always liked that idea. Well, what does Harbinger give us? Well, a Grandmaster trait that says you can give yourself, you know, power or whatever, or you can give AoE quickness. Oh, look! This is kind of the minion idea. And then you can drink your big elixirs and you can splash all these boons onto all the minions and you could see how much damage they do. So I did try a Death Magic Harbinger. It was right up my alley. But in play, it didn't feel that good. Because minions just don't really hit that hard. And here's the other thing. I think there was a Harbinger bug where it wasn't sharing quickness to my minions, even though I had the trait on. So I was in like the Domain of Istan trying that concept out. It's a really cool concept that ArenaNet could totally lean into with the Harbinger if they want another build path to be available. But for this beta, it kind of didn't work, and it's disappointing, but really that's how it felt for me. So finally, we have the Willbender. What were my experiences here? Well, my Willbender experiences were undoubtedly the best of the day. I really had a lot of fun here. So my first attempt was just to load on a good amount of damage, you know, but a little bit of quality of life as I just immediately saw fit. And what I wanted to do was just experience running around killing enemies, like mowers and drakes and stuff. I wanted to see whether it had the kill pressure to jump in on something, kill it, and then run off to the next target and kill that, and run off to the next target and kill that, and keep the flow up. That would have been really fun to me. That's what I wanted out of the Willbender when I saw it had so much mobility. I will note that just that whole concept of a builds, I really like, and I like playing like that. But since Path of Fire came out and mounts, it's kind of an unnecessary concept now. Because every class, every build, no matter who you are, or what you do, or what your identity is in game, you can kill a creature, break combat, and then get on a raptor, and rush to the next fight, and then open the next fight with a really powerful raptor attack. Like, the mounts are busted and kind of completely eclipse any necessity for a build that ever felt good like this. So, like, classic Corteria Dagger Ellie with all the dagger mobility and stuff, you don't need to do that anymore because everyone has mounts. And so you may as well just run something that's a little bit more stationary and let the mounts do this flow thing. The only way that the flow still feels fun is if you are able to burst out a ton of mobility in that space while you're still in combat before the mount option would come up. And then maybe it feels a little bit worthwhile. A little bit. But I mean, mounts tread all over this. And from what we've seen about End of Dragons so far, they're not doing anything with mounts. It's going to be exactly the same. So everything I'm talking about here may be completely unnecessary. But I wanted to try it out. It's what it felt like Willbender was made for, and I didn't like the idea that what Willbender excels at is just replaced by mounts. So I gave it a shot, and I have to say, guys, I had a lot of fun. It worked. I was able to kill creatures at fast enough speed to then get into more F abilities and teleport forwards. The Sword 5 still feels underwhelming. The F skills still feel underwhelming for mobility, but one of the teleports on the utility skills feels really good. I wasn't even using Judge's Intervention. I was just using the new physicals, and they all felt really great. Much, much more fun than they did on the PvP day. So I got to experience a ton of these new animations, and I can definitely imagine running around Cantha having fun here. It probably needs just a little bit more pressure. My feeling is about 15 to 20% behind the kill pressure I would want it to have. But aside from that, it worked. Straight away it worked. So then I went to try some harder things, like different Path of Fire hero challenges. Heart of Thorns hero challenge is really hard, but you have to remember the Heart of Thorns hero challenges are more about group play. So like, while the Harbinger is super busted and could definitely beat some of them, and I was fighting like the frog in Heart of Thorns using it, I don't see the Willbender being able to do it. I don't see the Virtuoso being able to do it, but maybe that's okay, because it's the Path of Fire calibration I'm expecting for End of Dragons. Cantha is going to be filled with hero challenges you can probably solo, but will actually be a little bit of a real fight. So I took the Willbender to do a bunch of those. I took the Willbender to do the Djinn challenge too. And at these moments, I realized that it is actually very weak and needed a good amount of buildcraft. So that's what I did. And I swear to God, guys, even based on everything you've heard me say already about how fun Harbinger buildcraft and stuff was, I had some of the most fun buildcraft I've had in a long time here on the Willbender. Because there's so much fun stuff to play with. So that the Willbender is about like lots of multi-packet hits, right? The stances you get toggled into after you use an F ability, they all value just lots and lots and lots of hits. So I ended up finding a build that was a Zeal/Honor build that's all about spamming symbols everywhere. So all those symbols keep ticking damage, which helps with all the Willbender stuff. And then it was also a build that was all about Aegis, because like F3, what that will do is that will give you Aegis over and over and over again. So if you've got 1 billion symbols down, you can get value out of that Aegis. So I ran Honor and Zeal, so every time Aegis broke on me, it healed me. And every time Aegis broke on me, it was a Mystic Rebuke build, so I'd splash damage back out. And then you could jump in, even on like epically dangerous stuff, like 4 Fire Djinn at once, and start fighting them, and you'd just be like infinitely survivable, just going block, 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 like exploding damage out with Mystic Rebuke, healing yourself up with Sustain. It was really, really, really fun, and I actually felt like a good, cool build that was still good, chaining enemies down like mowers and drakes and stuff as before. So I had a lot of fun on that. One of the traits as well felt very, very fun. The Tyrant's Momentum trait, I think it's called, in which you can kind of slowly chain through your F skills to keep a damage modifier up, and that new type of stacking they talked about in their stream, if you guys caught it or you saw my video discussing that. That interaction feels really good. I recommend it to you guys. The trait that heals you when your Willbender flames are up was also really, really good. That plus like all the symbol healing plus all of the Aegis break healing just meant I was rapidly getting my health back, and it felt like that kind of bruisery playstyle. It doesn't feel assassin-y or big damage payoff-y at all. It feels bruisery, and that was where I ended up having the most fun. I do have a lot of points of feedback for the Willbender. I think the main thing they need to do is the F skills. These are the things that feel most fun, because the Willbender has the same problem I've just said about the Virtuoso, in that it feels too much like a core guardian. It's so greatsword reliant. Like, I tried it with Mace, I tried it with Scepter, I tried to complement the sword with other stuff that wasn't sword main hand. It just doesn't work. It really is a whole spec that feels like it's greatsword and sword. That's what you want to run. And maybe that's fine, but when you're bursting people on greatsword, even though you're getting all these big modifiers from Willbender, you know, like power for power, you've lost toughness, but you've gained loads of power, you've got these big modifiers, so your greatsword's hitting really hard, it's still a greatsword that's hitting hard. It still feels like a guardian, and I don't like that. One way they can improve that is by looking specifically at the F skills and making most of the impact on them. So like the F1, where you rush in and you uppercut someone, I feel like that uppercut should be big damage, because it's a long, slow, meaty animation. I want to feel like there's a good payoff there. Maybe that should open up the whole fight in a really satisfying way, or close out a fight if I uppercut someone, or the dragon claw that it drops on the ground, or any of the flames that get dropped. Maybe they should be lasting longer on the floor. Maybe there should be a way to make them bigger through a trait or something. Already traiting them feels pretty fun, but I feel like they need to go further with those sides of it. And then, of course, the movement as well. Like, there's 3 elements to these F abilities. All of them could use some propping up, or so that the emphasis is more on them. I also feel like the F2 is really weird, because quite often, if you want to like drop that for alacrity, say you're running Phoenix Protocol, it kind of like awkwardly moves you away from your target a lot of the time. So what do? Do you like, and there's fun things you can do with that. You can then prepare like a new teleport flash combo back in, or you can Greatsword 3 back in, or one of my favorite things I realized I can do is you can like Greatsword 5 someone, F2 to run away a little bit and get that going, and then you can drag them back to you with the other half of the Greatsword 5. You can do fun stuff, but it just feels a little bit clunky and a little bit strange, so maybe some focus on that. But the other thing I would say is the F1 stance combo bit, it just splashes burning out, and really there isn't a great burn build here. There's just not, so it feels super useless. So what I would like on that stance area is flat damage ticks. Now that would be super cool, so it helps you to feed into getting you to the next one, and that really plays into the idea of the Willbender, you know, death through 1,000 cuts. And if they don't focus there, then the utility skills are already really badass and really fun, but the more physical stuff, the more emphasis on martial art animations, the better. The martial art animations are kind of drowned out on Guardian though. I just told you guys I ended up playing on like a very symbol heavy build. You got to remember that Guardian is a heavy armor caster, so its whole vibe and aesthetic is blinding lights and, you know, like huge radiant symbolic prints everywhere. So when you're standing in a million glowy circles, or even if you're just standing in a couple of them, right, it's not just my build, you really don't get to enjoy the fact that you're using all of these subtle jabs and punches and stuff. You know, a lot of these animations were borrowed, say, from like Daredevil. On a Daredevil, you can really feel it and it really works because it's not a class filled with exploding shining lights everywhere. Comboing the two together on a Guardian feels just completely mismatched in a way. And the idea that they'd be able to resolve that, I don't know. So that's a bit of a shame, but emphasis on the utilities I think would be very nice. And then the same points of feedback I have with Sword from PvP. I really want the Sword 5 to move me further, especially in PvE. It should be allowed to, especially in PvE. I'm not too bummed out about Sword 4 anymore. It feels like it fits and it flows well enough. Maybe it could hit harder. I did say earlier that 15 to 20% off base, it feels like. So maybe that is a thing they can look at. But in general, I wouldn't mind too much if that remains as it is, as long as, you know, just other areas are propped up instead. So that's it. I would say Willbender was my favorite of the day. That's how I found PvE. There's a really easy, great Harbinger build I could recommend to people. There's a great Willbender build I could recommend to people. Virtuoso I'm still a little bit up on the air on, but it's so buggy, this beta. I don't know whether I want to do any serious theory craft on it really at all. And that's where I am with the beta, guys. Thanks very much for watching these reviews. Thanks for listening to what I have to say. Let me know what you think about any of this stuff, especially if you tuned in on the stream yesterday. And anyone who missed it, obviously, I did give you guys all these experiences in real time as they were happening. I have a second YouTube channel. It's called WoodenPotatoes 2. If you click WoodenPotatoes down below, you go to my main channel, you'll see a link to the second channel right there, and the VODs are up there. You guys can watch them through if you're at work, you're bored. It will see you through your whole shift today. And yeah, just lots of fun. I love these moments of guilds, really do. There's a couple more days of the beta. If you guys have cool ideas you want to see, maybe we can do some world versus world stuff. Maybe we can take it into strikes and things. I'm kind of up in the air on that. So let me know, guys. Thanks very much for watching. Give me some of your experiences down below. I'll be there for the discussion. I read all the comments, as always. Oh, and finally, sorry this is such a long outro. It's been too long. I want to get back to the new player guide series. So anyone has a new player guide that they really want a suggestion, please give me suggestions for that in this video. I know it feels inappropriate, but down there, I would love to read some of those because I want to bring that series back before it's like completely forgotten about. All this End of Dragon stuff's taken over, but we can start looking at these other projects again. So let me have those, and yeah, thanks guys. I'll see you next time.